The rain in Oak Haven was not the kind that washed things clean. It was the kind that made the grime stick. It was a cold, miserable evening in November. The sky hung a bruised purple as dusk settled over the well-manicured lawns of the North District. Special Agent Jalen Thorpe sat in the driver's seat of a charcoal-gray Chevy Malibu. The engine was off to conserve fuel and keep his profile low. He was not in one of the Bureau's flashier SUVs. He was deep undercover, or at least gray undercover, blending in without a fake persona, just existing in the background where people rarely looked. Jalen adjusted the heat vent, though it was not blowing. He was 42 with the build of a man who spent his mornings boxing and his evenings reading case files. His skin was dark, his eyes sharp and analytical, currently fixed on the colonial-style house across the street, 420 Elm, the home of Councilman Victor Langston. Langston was not just a local politician. He was the suspected linchpin in a massive money-laundering operation moving through the state's construction contracts. Jalen had been building this RICO case for months. He was not here to arrest Langston, not yet. He was here to see who visited him on a Tuesday night before the city budget vote. Jalen took a sip of lukewarm coffee from a thermos. "Come on, Victor," Jalen whispered to the silence of the car. "Make the call." He was dressed for comfort, not for a press conference. He wore a heavy navy hoodie, dark jeans, and Timberland boots. To the casual observer, he did not look like the assistant special agent in charge of the Chicago field office. To the untrained eye, he looked like a suspicious male sitting in a car in a neighborhood where the average income hovered around $250,000 a year. And unfortunately for Jalen, Officer Wyatt Harlan had a very untrained eye. A cruiser rolled past slowly. Jalen saw it in his rearview mirror. Unit 4 Alpha, Oak Haven, PD. He did not flinch. He did not duck. He just kept his eyes on the councilman's house. Federal Protocol 101. Do not act guilty and you will not look guilty. But the cruiser did not keep going. It braked hard. The reverse lights flared white in the gloom. Jalen's grip on the steering wheel tightened just a fraction. "Do not do it," he muttered. "Just keep driving, officer. You have no idea what you're walking into." The cruiser backed up until it was parallel with Jalen's hood. Then the blinding takedown lights flicked on, flooding the interior of the Malibu with harsh white illumination. Jalen squinted, shielding his eyes with one hand. He knew the drill. He reached slowly toward the passenger seat where his credentials lay hidden under a newspaper. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The voice boomed over the cruiser's PA system. Jalen froze. He slowly placed both hands on the steering wheel, fingers spread wide. He was a professional. He knew that any sudden movement could be interpreted as a threat, especially by a nervous local cop. He watched in the side mirror as two officers emerged. The driver was a big man, broad shoulders, thick neck, the kind of guy who spent too much time bench pressing and not enough time de-escalating. That was Officer Wyatt Harlan. His reputation preceded him. Jalen had read the local precinct reports as part of his recon. Harlan had 6 excessive force complaints in 6 years, all dismissed by a friendly internal review board. The passenger was younger, skinnier. Officer Finn Brooks, a rookie barely out of the academy, looking like he was trying to grow a mustache that refused to cooperate. Brooks looked nervous. Harlan looked hungry. Jalen rolled down the window as Harlan approached, his hand resting heavily on his holstered Glock. "Good evening, officer," Jalen said. His voice was deep, steady, and devoid of fear. Harlan did not return the greeting. He shined his flashlight directly into Jalen's eyes, blinding him. "License and registration." "Now, it is a rental," Jalen said calmly, keeping his hands on the wheel. My identification is in my jacket pocket, and my federal credentials are on the passenger seat under that paper. I'm going to reach for them slowly. Do not you reach for a damn thing, Harlan snapped. Get out of the car. Jalen tried again, channeling the authority he used to command at task forces. I am a federal agent conducting an active surveillance operation. If you force me out of this vehicle, you are compromising a federal investigation. Harlan let out a short, barking laugh. He looked back at Brooks, who was standing by the rear bumper, hand hovering near his taser. You hear that, Finn? Harlan sneered. We got a federal agent here. Probably Special Agent Hoodie, right? He turned back to Jalen, his face hardening. I said get out of the car now or I drag you out. Jalen calculated the odds. If he resisted, Harlan would tase him or shoot him. If he complied, he blew his cover for the Langston investigation, but he stayed alive. The choice was obvious, but it tasted like bile. I am complying, Jalen said. He unbuckled his seatbelt with slow, deliberate movements. He opened the door and stepped out into the rain. He stood 3 inches taller than Harlan. For a second, the power dynamic shifted just by sheer physical presence. Harlan did not like that. Turn around, Harlan commanded. Hands on the hood. Spread them. Check my credentials, Harlan, Jalen said, using the officer's name intentionally. They are on the seat. Just look at the badge. Shut up. Harlan shoved Jalen forward, slamming his chest against the wet metal of the rental car. Jalen exhaled sharply as the air left his lungs. He felt Harlan's hands patting him down aggressively, checking the waistband, the pockets. Harlan's hand brushed against the concealed holster at Jalen's hip, his service weapon, a Glock 19M. Gun! Harlan screamed. He has got a gun! It is a service weapon, Jalen shouted, his voice finally rising. I am FBI. But it was too late. The logic had left the building. Harlan kicked Jalen's legs apart, forcing him down to his knees in the mud. Brooks rushed forward, looking terrified. Cuff him! Cuff him now, Harlan roared. Jalen felt the cold steel of the handcuffs bite into his wrists. He did not fight back. He knew that fighting back was a death sentence. Instead, he engaged a different weapon, his mind. He began to memorize everything, the time, the procedural errors, the lack of probable cause, the specific insults Harlan was muttering. You boys have really stepped in it, Jalen said, his cheek pressed against the wet asphalt. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I gave you a chance. You have the right to remain silent, Harlan spat, yanking Jalen up by the handcuffs, sending a searing pain through his shoulders. So use it. As they dragged him toward the cruiser, Jalen looked back at the councilman's house. The curtains moved. Councilman Langston was watching. The operation was blown. Jalen Thorpe's eyes went cold. He was not just an agent anymore. He was a man who had just lost months of work to a bully with a badge. And now he was going to destroy that bully's career with the precision of a surgeon. The back of a police interceptor is designed to be uncomfortable. It is a hard plastic shell smelling of old sweat, vomit, and industrial cleaner. Jalen sat awkwardly, his hands cuffed behind his back, his knees pressed against the cage divider. In the front seat, the atmosphere was electric, but for the wrong reasons. Harlan was high on adrenaline, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel as he merged back onto the main road. Brooks, the rookie, was sitting in the passenger seat, looking back at Jalen through the plexiglass. Wyatt, Brooks said softly. Maybe we should have checked that ID. He really did not act like a perp, Nolan. Harlan scoffed, checking his rearview mirror to glare at Jalen. Everyone is a lawyer or a fed when they get caught. Guy was sitting outside a councilman's house in a hoodie, probably casing the joint for a robbery. We just saved the neighborhood. Jalen leaned forward as much as the cuffs would allow. Officer Brooks, is it? Brooks jumped slightly. Yeah. Check the computer, Jalen said. His voice was calm, muffled slightly by the glass. Run the plate of the Malibu. It is a fleet rental registered to the U.S. General Services Administration. Run my name, Jalen Thorpe. Do not run squat, Harlan ordered. We book him as John Doe if he does not have ID on him. Let the desk sergeant sort it out. You left my ID in the car, Jalen said, which is a violation of procedure. You also left my vehicle unlocked on a public street with a federal firearm inside. That is a felony, Harlan. Negligence. Harlan slammed on the brakes at a red light, turning around to shout through the grate. You shut your mouth. You are in my world now, pal. You speak when spoken to. You have minutes, Jalen said. Harlan frowned. What? We are about minutes from the precinct, Jalen analyzed. But my team tracks my vitals via my smartwatch. They know my heart rate just spiked. They know I have stopped moving. They are tracking the GPS of the car. If I do not check in within the next minutes, a distress signal goes out. Minutes after that, the cavalry arrives. Jalen paused, letting the silence hang heavy. Minutes, Harlan. That is how long you have to pull over, uncuff me, and pray I do not file charges for assault on a federal officer. Harlan laughed, but it sounded forced this time. You watch too many movies. But Brooks was not laughing. The rookie's hands were shaking as he reached for the onboard laptop. He began typing. What are you doing? Harlan snapped. I'm just checking. Brooks's voice cracked. If he is lying, we add impersonating an officer to the charges. It strengthens our case. Harlan grunted, but did not stop him. The light turned green. The rain hammered against the roof. Jalen closed his eyes and began to count the seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. In the front seat, the rhythmic clicking of the keyboard was the only sound. Then silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Wyatt, Brooks whispered. What? Harlan snapped. Wyatt, pull over. I am not pulling over. Garrett, pull the car over now. Brooks screamed, his voice pitching up into hysteria. Harlan swerved slightly, startled by the rookie's outburst. What the hell is your problem? Brooks turned the laptop screen toward the driver. Look at the return on the name. Look at the clearance level. It is red. 1 classified. Top secret clearance. Harlan squinted at the screen. The color drained from his face faster than the rain running down the windshield. The screen did not look like a normal criminal history check. It was flashing a bright red banner. Federal agent. Do not detain. Contact SAC. Chicago immediately. Below that was a photo of Jalen Thorpe in a suit looking stern and his title, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Organized Crime Division. Oh no, Harlan breathed. Oh no. I told you, came the voice from the back seat. Minutes left. Harlan's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. It is fake, he stammered. It has got to be a hack. People can hack these things. It is the NCIC database, Wyatt, Brooks yelled. You cannot hack the NCIC from the back of a cop car. We just arrested the head of the FBI's organized crime unit. Uncuff him, Harlan said, his voice trembling. We stop. We let him go. We say it was a misunderstanding. Too late, Jalen said. You already called it in. Dispatch knows you have a suspect. If you let me go now without processing, it is kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment. You are already in the quicksand, Harlan. Stop struggling, you will only sink faster. Harlan panicked. He did the worst thing possible. He doubled down. No, Harlan said, his eyes wild. We bring him in. We find something on him. He had a gun. He was threatening us. We stick to the story. It is his word against ours." Brooks looked at Harlan like he was insane. "Are you crazy? He is the FBI." "He is a suspect," Harlan roared, "and we are the police. We run this town, not the feds." Jalen shook his head in the darkness. "Minutes," he whispered. Suddenly the radio crackled to life, but it was not the bored voice of the dispatcher. It was the chief of police, Chief Ellis Mercer. "Unit 4 Alpha, this is Chief Mercer. What is your location?" "Over." Harlan grabbed the mic, his hand sweating. Chief, we are southbound on Main, bringing in a 1015, resisting arrest, possession of a concealed weapon." There was a pause on the radio, a pause that lasted an eternity. 4 Alpha. The chief's voice came back tight and strained. "I have the special agent in charge of the Chicago FBI on my personal line. He says you have one of his men. He says his agent's panic beacon just triggered. Stop the vehicle immediately." Harlan dropped the mic. It dangled from the dashboard by its cord, swinging back and forth like a pendulum. Jalen leaned back against the hard plastic seat and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a shark that smells blood in the water. "Time is up," Jalen said. Blue and red lights erupted in front of them. Not one car, 6 unmarked black SUVs swerved across the median, blocking all lanes of traffic. SWAT trucks mounted the curb. The sky above them began to chop with the sound of a low-flying helicopter. Harlan slammed on the brakes, sending the cruiser into a skid. They came to a halt, surrounded by a wall of federal steel. "Open the door, Harlan," Jalen commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "And pray." The intersection of Main Street and 4th Avenue looked less like a rainy suburban road and more like a war zone. The air was vibrating, literally vibrating, with the thrum of the helicopter hovering just above the tree line, its spotlight pinning Officer Harlan's cruiser to the asphalt like a bug under a microscope. Inside the cruiser, the silence was deafening, broken only by the hyperventilating breaths of Rookie Officer Finn Brooks. "What do we do?" Brooks squeaked, his hands hovering uselessly over the dashboard. "Wyatt, what do we do?" Officer Wyatt Harlan did not answer. He was staring through the rain-slicked windshield at the wall of black SUVs. Doors flew open. Men and women in body armor poured out. They did not move like patrol cops. They moved with fluid, terrifying precision. They carried carbines, not pistols. On the back of their tactical vests, huge yellow letters spelled out the 3 letters Harlan had been praying were a lie. FBI. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker on the lead SUV. It was not the polite warning Harlan had given Jalen. It was a command from God. "Driver of the police vehicle, throw the keys out the window. Exit the vehicle, walking backwards, hands on your head. Do it now." Harlan's ego, inflated by years of bullying locals, suddenly punctured. He looked at the rearview mirror. Jalen Thorpe was just watching him. The agent was not smiling anymore. His expression was one of profound, exhausted disappointment. "Open the door, Harlan," Jalen said again. "Do not make them breach. You will not like the breach." Harlan's hand shook as he rolled down the window. He tossed the keys. They clattered onto the wet road. He opened the door and stepped out into the blinding lights. "Walk backwards," the voice screamed. Harlan complied. He felt the rain soaking his uniform, weighing him down. He felt small. For the first time in his career, he felt exactly how every suspect he had ever harassed felt, helpless. Strong hands grabbed him. He was spun around, slammed against the side of his own cruiser, the exact same way he had slammed Jalen minutes earlier. But these hands were professional. They checked him for weapons efficiently, stripping his Glock, his taser, and his backup piece in seconds. "Officer Wyatt Harlan," a voice asked. Harlan looked up. Standing in front of him was a man in a trench coat flanked by two tactical operators. This was Special Agent in Charge Barrett Knox. He looked like a man who ate gravel for breakfast. "Yes," Harlan croaked. "I am a police officer. I was performing a traffic stop." "You are under arrest," Knox interrupted, his voice cutting like a razor. "Title 18, Section 242. Deprivation of rights under color of law. Also, obstruction of a federal investigation, assault on a federal officer, and kidnapping." "Kidnapping?" Harlan shouted as the cuffs clicked onto his wrists. "I arrested a suspect." "You abducted a federal agent?" Knox corrected. He leaned in close, his nose inches from Harlan's. "You see that man you put in the cage?" Knox pointed. Two agents were carefully helping Jalen out of the back seat. They did not handle him like a criminal. They handled him like a brother. One agent was already using a key to unlock the handcuffs. Another was draping a dry jacket over Jalen's shoulders. Jalen rubbed his wrists, grimacing. He walked over to where Harlan was being held. The circle of agents parted to let him through. Jalen looked at Harlan. He looked at the mud on his own knees. He looked at the rookie, Brooks, who was crying while being zip-tied by another agent near the trunk. "I told you," Jalen said softly. "Minutes. You set me up." Harlan spat, trying to salvage some shred of his pride. "You were bait." Jalen laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I was not bait for you, Harlan. You are not that important. I was hunting a whale. You were just the bottom feeder that swam into the net." Jalen turned to Knox. "Barrett, did we get the audio?" Knox tapped his earpiece. "Clear as day. The wire you were wearing picked up everything. The refusal to check ID, the threats, the assault. It is all recorded. Cloud upload finished minutes ago." Harlan's face went pale. A wire. The hoodie. The suspicious agent. Jalen had been wired for sound to record the councilman. Instead, he had recorded the entire illegal arrest. "Get him out of my sight," Jalen waved his hand. "And take the rookie in separately. He wanted to check the ID. He might be salvageable as a witness." "You cannot do this," Harlan screamed as they dragged him toward a black SUV. "I know the chief. I know the mayor." Jalen did not turn around. He walked to the trunk of the rental car, which the FBI forensics team was already dusting, and retrieved his credentials. He clipped his badge onto his belt. "Barrett?" Jalen said, looking at the Oak Haven police station down the road. "Change of plans. We are not going to the field office." "No?" Knox asked. "No," Jalen said, his eyes hard. Harlan was too confident. He said, We run this town." He was not scared of the consequences. "That tells me this is not an isolated incident. That tells me the rot goes deeper." Jalen looked at the flashing lights of the local precinct in the distance. "We are going to the station," Jalen declared. "I want to see who comes to bail him out. We are taking over the precinct." The Oak Haven police precinct was usually a quiet place in the evening, but tonight it looked like an anthill that had been kicked over. The lobby was full of suits. FBI agents were seizing computers. A tactical team was guarding the exits. The local cops were standing against the walls, looking confused and terrified, their hands hovering near their belts, but terrified to touch them. Chief of Police, Ellis Mercer, was sweating through his white shirt. He stood in the middle of the bullpen trying to regain control of his station. This is unprecedented, Mercer shouted at the swarm of agents. You cannot just waltz in here and commandeer my station. I want to see a warrant. The double doors swung open. The room went silent. Jalen Thorpe walked in. He was still wearing the muddy jeans and the hoodie, but he walked with the stride of a king. Flanking him were SAC Knox and 4 tactical agents. Jalen walked straight up to the chief. He did not stop until he was in Mercer's personal space. You want a warrant? Jalen asked. He pulled a folded document from his back pocket and slapped it against the chief's chest. Seizure authorized by a federal judge minutes ago. We are seizing all dashcam footage, all body cam logs, and all arrest records from the last 6 years. Chief Mercer looked at Jalen, then at the badge on his belt. He swallowed hard. Agent Thorpe, Look, Harlan is a hothead. We know that. We can handle this internally. There is no need to turn this into a circus. It is not a circus, Chief, Jalen said calmly. It is a crime scene, and right now this building is the evidence. Jalen turned to the holding cells. Bring me Harlan. Minutes later, Jalen sat in the interrogation room. It was the same room where Harlan had intimidated hundreds of suspects. Now Harlan was cuffed to the table, staring at the two-way mirror. Jalen walked in alone. He carried a plastic cup of water and a thick file folder. He sat down opposite Harlan. He did not speak. He just opened the file and began reading. Wyatt Harlan, Jalen read aloud. Decorated officer. 3 commendations for drug busts. 6 complaints for excessive force. And interesting. Jalen looked up. You own a boat, Harlan? A Sea Ray? Harlan glared. What does that have to do with anything? It is an $80,000 boat, Jalen noted, on a salary of $65,000 a year. And you paid cash? Harlan shifted in his seat. I inherited money. Oh, we checked, Jalen said. Your parents died broke. You have no inheritance, but you do have a very interesting relationship with Councilman Langston's construction crews. We found deposits, Harlan. Small ones under $10,000, so they do not flag the IRS, but lots of them. Jalen leaned forward. The twist was not just the arrest, it was the scope. I was not at 420 Elm Street to catch the councilman. Jalen lied smoothly. He wanted to see Harlan squirm. We already have the councilman. We have him on racketeering. He flipped days ago. This was a bluff. The councilman had not flipped yet, but Harlan did not know that. Harlan's eyes went wide. What? Langston gave us a list, Jalen continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. A list of police officers on his payroll. Officers who look the other way when his trucks move through the city. Officers who harass his political rivals. Officers who arrest suspicious people parked outside his house to keep his meetings secret. Jalen slammed his hand on the table. Harlan jumped. You were not protecting the neighborhood, Jalen roared. You were protecting the operation. You saw a car watching your boss, and you tried to scare me off. But you were too stupid to realize I was not a rival gang member. You tried to muscle the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I did not know, Harlan cried, the tough guy facade completely shattering. Langston told me to keep the street clear on Tuesdays. That is all. He pays me $500 a week just to patrol that block. I did not know about the laundering. Jalen sat back, a satisfied smile touching his lips. He glanced at the mirror. He knew Knox was recording. Harlan had just confessed to corruption. $500 a week, Jalen murmured. You threw your life away for $500 a week. I can help you, Harlan pleaded, leaning over the table, rattling the cuffs. I can testify against Langston. I can give you the others. There is more. Sergeant Donovan, Officer Blaine, they are all in on it. Jalen stood up. He walked to the door and knocked twice. "You will testify," Jalen said, "but not for a deal. You will testify because you have no choice. You are going to federal prison, Harlan, for a long, long time. And do you know what happens to dirty cops in federal prison?" Jalen opened the door. "They become very popular," Jalen said coldly. He stepped out into the hallway where Chief Mercer was standing with SAC Knox. The chief looked like he was about to faint. "Did you get that?" Jalen asked. Knox held up a digital recorder. Loud and clear, he named Sergeant Donovan and Officer Blaine. "We are rounding them up now." Jalen turned to the chief. "Chief Mercer, it seems your department has a systemic infection. I am afraid I am going to have to place you under administrative review until we determine if you knew about Harlan's side hustle." "I did not," Mercer protested. "I swear." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Jalen said, walking past him. "But right now, I have a councilman to visit, and this time, I am not going to sit in the car." Jalen walked toward the exit, the sea of FBI agents parting for him. He was tired, his wrists were bruised, and his clothes were muddy. But as he stepped back out into the night rain, he felt lighter. He had gone looking for a white-collar criminal. He had ended up cleaning up a police department, but the night was not over. The karma train had one more stop because while Harlan was crying in the interrogation room, the dashcam footage of the arrest was being processed, and Jalen knew exactly where it was going to go. The court of public opinion was about to open session. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but the internet moves at the speed of light. While Jalen Thorpe was busy dismantling the corruption ring within the Oak Haven Police Department, the digital world was about to ignite. It was not Jalen who leaked the footage. He was too disciplined for that. It was rookie officer Finn Brooks. In a desperate bid to secure immunity and prove he was not like his partner, Brooks's attorney had inadvertently allowed the dashcam file to be included in a public records request filed by a local journalist, Theodore Mercer. In the morning, the video titled "Oak Haven Cop versus FBI Agent, the 7-minute mistake," went live. By mid-morning, it had thousands of views. By noon, it had millions. The video was a perfect storm of outrage. The audio was crisp. Viewers watched in horror as Jalen, calm and compliant, was bullied, mocked, and assaulted. They heard Harlan's arrogance. They heard the racial slurs muttered under his breath. They heard the chilling line, "We run this town." But the climax, the moment the screen flashed red with the federal clearance warning and Harlan's face crumbled, became the most shared clip on the planet. For Wyatt Harlan, who had been released on a massive bond-pending trial, the real punishment began before he ever stepped foot in a courtroom. He was sitting in his kitchen, staring at a bowl of cereal he could not eat, when his phone started buzzing. It was not a text. It was a deluge. Hundreds of notifications per minute. He opened Twitter. His name was trending. Hashtag Wyatt Harlan is a criminal. Hashtag Fire Harlan. Hashtag 7-minute mistake. He went to Facebook. His profile was flooded with comments. People from his high school. People he had bullied years ago. Strangers from other countries. They were all there. "Remember when you gave me a ticket for going 2 over? Karma is coming." "You are a tough guy. Not so tough now, are you?" Harlan threw his phone across the room. It cracked against the wall. He heard a noise outside. He walked to the window and peered through the blinds. There were news vans, 4 of them. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and the local affiliate. A reporter was standing on his lawn, pointing at his front door. "We are live outside the home of the disgraced officer," the reporter was saying. Harlan's wife, Lila, walked into the kitchen. She was dressed in a suit, carrying a suitcase. She looked tired. She looked done. "Where are you going?" Harlan asked, his voice cracking. "My mother's," Lila said. She did not look at him. "I cannot do this, Wyatt. The threats, the shame. I cannot go to the grocery store without people spitting on the ground when they see me. I lost my job at the bank this morning. They said I am a distraction." "You cannot leave me," Harlan pleaded. "I'm going to beat this. It was a misunderstanding." Lila stopped at the door. She finally looked at him, and the look was worse than anger. It was pity. "I saw the video, Wyatt. You were not a cop. You were a monster, and you were stupid." She walked out. The door slammed. Harlan watched her get into her car, ignoring the reporter shouting questions at her. The hard karma was not finished. An hour later, a tow truck backed into his driveway. A large man in coveralls jumped out and started hooking up Harlan's prized possession, the Sea Ray boat. Harlan ran out the front door, forgetting the reporters. Hey, you cannot take that." The repo man did not stop. He handed Harlan a clipboard. "Bank called the loan, breach of contract. Plus, the IRS put a freeze on your assets about an hour ago. Something about undeclared income." The cameras flashed. The reporter shouted, "Officer Harlan, do you have a comment on the corruption charges?" "Officer Harlan, is it true you were working for Councilman Langston?" Harlan stood there in his sweatpants, watching his boat, the symbol of his ill-gotten gains, being dragged away. He was alone. His wife was gone. His career was dead, and the entire world was watching him cry. Meanwhile, across town, Jalen Thorpe sat in a quiet diner, eating a slice of cherry pie. On the TV above the counter, the news was playing the clip of Harlan's arrest. The waitress poured him a refill of coffee. "Can you believe that guy?" she asked, pointing at the screen with the pot, thinking he could bully the FBI. "Glad they got him." Jalen smiled, taking a sip. "Yeah, me too." He did not tell her who he was. He did not need the fame. He just needed the win. Months later, the Federal District Court of Illinois was packed to the rafters. This was not a local traffic court. This was the big leagues. The room smelled of mahogany and floor wax. The seal of the United States hung high above the judge's bench. Wyatt Harlan sat at the defense table. He looked years older. His hair was thinning, his skin pasty. He wore a cheap suit that did not fit right. His good suits had been seized as evidence of purchases made with laundered money. His lawyer was a court-appointed public defender named Morris Finch. Finch was a decent lawyer, but he looked exhausted. Defending the most hated man in America was not an easy gig. On the other side of the aisle sat the prosecution. Leading the charge was Assistant U.S. Attorney Ronan Slade. Slade was known as the Hammer. He did not lose. And sitting next to him in a crisp charcoal suit was Special Agent Jalen Thorpe. The presiding judge was Miriam Caldwell. She was a legend in the circuit. Fair but terrifyingly strict, she tapped her gavel. "The court is now in session. United States of America versus Wyatt Harlan. Charges: deprivation of civil rights, conspiracy to commit racketeering, assault on a federal officer." The trial lasted weeks, but the outcome felt inevitable from day one. The prosecution's case was a masterclass. They did not just play the video, they dissected it. Jalen took the stand on the third day. He walked with the same calm authority he had shown on the street. He swore in. "Agent Thorpe," Slade asked, pacing in front of the jury, "why did you not identify yourself immediately?" "I attempted to," Jalen said. his voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. I stated my credentials were on the seat. I stated the weapon was a service pistol. Officer Harlan refused to look. He was not interested in the truth. He was interested in dominance. And did you feel your life was in danger? I did, Jalen answered. Officer Harlan's behavior was erratic, aggressive, and violated every standard of police procedure. If I had moved my hand to retrieve my badge, I believe he would have shot me. The jury, 12 men and women from diverse backgrounds, looked at Harlan. Their eyes were cold. Then came the defense. Morris Finch tried his best. Officer Harlan, Finch said to his client on the stand, did you know he was an FBI agent? No, Harlan sobbed. He was trying to cry, but the tears looked forced. I was scared. It was a high-crime area. I thought he was reaching for a gun. I just wanted to go home to my family. And the money? Slade asked on cross-examination, standing up slowly. The deposits from Councilman Langston. That was a loan? Harlan stammered. A loan? Slade repeated flatly. A loan that you never paid back. A loan that coincided exactly with the dates you harassed Langston's political opponents. Harlan looked at the gallery. He saw Councilman Victor Langston sitting in the back row wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles. Langston had already been convicted. He was there as a witness against Harlan. And here came the twist Jalen had orchestrated. Slade called his surprise witness, Councilman Langston himself. Langston took the stand, looking bitter. He had cut a deal to shave years off his sentence, and the price of that deal was Wyatt Harlan. Mr. Langston, Slade asked, did you pay Officer Harlan to protect the neighborhood? No, Langston sneered. I paid him to be my muscle. But here's the thing. Langston looked directly at Harlan, a cruel smile playing on his lips. It was not my idea. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Harlan looked confused. Explain, Judge Caldwell ordered. Harlan came to me, Langston said, years ago. He found out about the construction contracts. He did not arrest me. He blackmailed me. He said for $2,000 a month he would keep the cops away. If I did not pay, he would raid my job sites. Harlan stood up, knocking his chair over. That is a lie. You are lying. Sit down, Mr. Harlan, the judge roared. Marshals stepped forward, hands on their weapons. He is the one who ran the ring, Langston shouted over the gavel. I was just the money. Harlan organized the patrol schedules. He recruited the other dirty cops. He was the boss. The courtroom erupted. This was the dagger. Harlan was not just a pawn. According to Langston, he was a predator who had bitten the hand that fed him. It did not matter if Langston was telling the whole truth or just spreading the blame. The damage was done. The jury saw Harlan not as a bumbling cop, but as a mastermind of corruption. Jalen watched Harlan unravel. He watched the man hyperventilate, realizing that his victim defense had just been nuked from orbit. The verdict. It took the jury less than 2 hours. Guilty. 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 Count after count. 15 counts total. Judge Caldwell looked at Harlan over her spectacles. The courtroom was silent. Wyatt Harlan, she said, you have disgraced the uniform. You have betrayed the public trust. You treated the law as your personal weapon. You bullied the weak. And when you finally met someone strong, you tried to lie your way out of it. She shuffled her papers. This court has no sympathy for bullies. For the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law, combined with the racketeering charges, I am sentencing you to 35 years in a federal penitentiary. 35 years. Harlan's knees gave out. He collapsed into his chair, sobbing uncontrollably. He was 34 years old. He would be an old man when or if he ever got out. And the judge added, "I am recommending you serve this time at USP Coleman." Harlan looked up, eyes wide with terror. USP Coleman was a high-security facility. It was known for housing many of the gang members Harlan had arrested over the years. "Court is adjourned." The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. Jalen stood up and buttoned his jacket. He did not look back at Harlan being dragged away by the marshals. He walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sun. Reporters swarmed him on the steps of the courthouse. Agent Thorpe, how do you feel? Is justice served?" Jalen stopped at the microphones. He looked into the cameras. "Justice is not a feeling," Jalen said, his voice grave. "It is a process. Today the process worked. But let this be a message. The badge is not a shield to hide behind. It is a burden to carry. If you drop it, do not expect us to pick it up for you." He walked through the crowd toward his car. But the story was not quite over. Harlan was gone. Langston was gone. But Jalen had mentioned the infection in the precinct, and infections, if not treated fully, have a nasty habit of coming back. As Jalen got into his car, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Agent Thorpe," a distorted voice whispered. "You got Harlan. Good for you. But you did not get the money." Jalen froze. "Who is this?" Harlan had a partner, not a cop. Silent partner. "You think the laundered money was just for boats? There's $5 million missing, Agent, and you are never going to find it." The line went dead. Jalen looked at the phone, then at the courthouse. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves. The hard karma had hit Harlan. But the game was just beginning. The phone call had ended, but the silence it left behind was louder than a siren. $5 million missing. You are never going to find it. Jalen Thorpe sat in his car, rain drumming on the roof, just like the night it all started. He replayed the distorted voice in his head. It was not a gangster's voice. The cadence was too precise. The grammar was too perfect. He pulled up the case file on his secure tablet. He scrolled past Wyatt Harlan's mugshot, past Councilman Langston's confession, until he reached the financial forensics report. The Bureau had seized the house, the boat, the cars. They had frozen Harlan's police pension, but the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, the report showed they had been accessed and drained hours ago. Jalen tapped the screen. Who had access? Harlan was in custody. Langston was in custody. He looked at the personal data section for Wyatt Harlan. Spouse: Lila Harlan. Occupation: Senior Branch Manager, Oak Haven, First National Bank. Jalen's eyes narrowed. He remembered the scene at the house. Lila walking out with a suitcase. The tears. The pity. "I cannot do this, Wyatt." He had assumed she was leaving a sinking ship. He had not considered she might be the one who drilled the hole in the hull. Jalen fired up the engine. He did not call for backup. He did not call Knox. He dialed the Port Authority. "This is Special Agent Thorpe," he barked. "I need a flight manifest check. Private charters departing in the next hour. Look for the name Lila Harlan. Or," he glanced at her maiden name in the file, "Lila Voss." There was a pause. The keyboard clacking on the other end was frantic. "Agent Thorpe, we have a Lila Voss listed on a charter to Belize. Wheels up in minutes from Hangar 4. "Stop that plane," Jalen commanded. "Ground it. National security hold." The private airfield was slick with rain. A sleek Gulfstream jet sat on the tarmac, engines whining as they spooled up. Jalen's car screeched onto the tarmac, bypassing the security gate with lights flashing. He drifted the sedan to a halt right in front of the jet's nose gear. He stepped out, his badge raised high. The pilot cut the engines. The whine died down to a low moan. The cabin door opened. Lila Harlan stood there. She was not wearing the frantic, tear-stained face of the abused wife anymore. She was wearing a Chanel suit and a look of cold, calculated annoyance. "You are interrupting my vacation, Agent Thorpe," she called down, her voice steady. Jalen walked to the bottom of the stairs. "The vacation is canceled, Lila, and so is the transfer." "I do not know what you are talking about," she said, descending the stairs slowly. "I divorced Wyatt this morning. I am a free woman. I have no involvement in his crimes." "You did not just know about the crimes," Jalen said, stepping closer. "You structured them. Wyatt was the muscle. Langston was the face. But you were the bank." Jalen pulled out his phone. "We traced the IP address of the transfer. It did not come from a hacker. It came from a tablet registered to your iCloud account. You moved the $5 million while the jury was reading the verdict. You thought everyone would be too busy watching your husband cry to notice the money moving." Lila stopped. The mask slipped just for a second. "Wyatt is an idiot," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "He thought he was a king because he had a badge. He bullied everyone, me included. For years, I washed his money, I hid his tracks, and I listened to him brag. I earned that money. It is my severance package." "It is evidence," Jalen corrected, "and you just confessed to money laundering and wire fraud." Lila smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. "You cannot prove I knew the source was illegal. I thought it was consulting fees." "Lila," Jalen said softly, "you worked at a bank. You know the know your customer laws better than I do." And he pointed to the jet. "You chartered a non-extradition flight under a maiden name. That is flight to avoid prosecution. That is consciousness of guilt." Sirens wailed in the distance. The local police, the new local police under new leadership, were closing in. Lila looked at the approaching lights, then back at Jalen. Her shoulders slumped. The game was over. "He's going to rot in there, is not he?" she asked quietly. 35 years, Jalen confirmed. "Good," she whispered. She held out her wrists. "At least in prison. I will not have to listen to him anymore." Epilogue: The shared fate. Months later, USP Coleman is a hard place. It is concrete, steel, and noise. Inmate 89402, formerly Officer Wyatt Harlan, was mopping the floor of the cafeteria. He kept his head down. He had learned quickly that in here he was not the hunter. He was the prey. The other inmates knew he was a cop. He had to pay protection money just to keep his teeth. A guard walked by. "Harlan, you got mail." Harlan dropped the mop. His heart leapt. Maybe it was an appeal. Maybe it was Lila saying she forgave him, that she would wait for him. He took the envelope. It was from the Department of Justice. He tore it open. It was not a letter. It was a notification of inmate transfer. Inmate Lila Voss Harlan. Location: USP Coleman, female camp. Status: sentenced to 12 years for money laundering. Harlan stared at the paper. She had not got away. She was here in the same complex, just across the fence. He walked to the window. Through the layers of chain link and razor wire, he could see the exercise yard of the women's camp. He saw a figure walking alone in a gray jumpsuit. He pressed his hand against the glass. "Lila," he whispered. She stopped. She looked across the yard toward his building. She did not wave. She did not cry. She just turned her back and kept walking. Harlan slid down the wall to the floor. The karma had not just hit him. It had swallowed his whole world. He had lost his job, his freedom, his money, and his wife. And he had done it all because he was too proud to check an ID. The final scene. Jalen Thorpe stood on the pier in Chicago, looking out at the dark water of Lake Michigan. The wind was cold, biting at his face. His phone buzzed. A text from SAC Knox. Case closed. Harlan and wife processed. All assets recovered. City Council is holding a special election. You did good, Jalen. Jalen put the phone away. He did not feel like a hero. He just felt like a garbage man who had finished a long shift. He pulled a coin from his pocket, a challenge coin from his old unit. He flipped it into the air, caught it, and shoved it back into his pocket. Minutes, he said to the wind. He turned up his collar and walked back toward the city lights. There were other towns, other corrupt officials, other bullies thinking they ran the world. And Jalen Thorpe was just getting started. And that is the story of how 7 minutes of arrogance cost a man his entire life. Officer Harlan thought the badge made him a god. He thought he could bully, intimidate, and take whatever he wanted, but he forgot the most important rule of the jungle. There's always a bigger predator. In the end, it was not just the FBI that took him down. It was his own ego. He had every chance to stop, every chance to apologize, but he chose the hard way. And karma delivered the bill with interest. What do you think? Did the sentence fit the crime? And was Lila just as guilty as her husband, or was she a victim who broke bad? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And do not forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, stay safe, stay humble, and always check the ID.